Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be another ranking. So if you know me, rankings are very hard for me, but I think of them as a very fun thought experiment and I am determined to do a bunch of them this month. So I am challenging myself to do a ranking for a bunch of brands, basically any of the brands I have multiple palettes from. And today's video is going to be on Natasha Denona. I have a lot of Natasha Denona palettes, why I can't even say her name. I have a very large stack in front of me. I have 1, 2, 3. I have 15 full-size palettes and 4 of the minis. I have all but 2 of the midi palettes. So I have a lot of thoughts. I've used these a lot, and I am ready to do an updated ranking. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Colin. I am a non-binary Latinx scientist and lover of makeup with a definite soft spot for indie makeup and high-end makeup, which you'll definitely see here. And I tend to take a pretty analytical approach to the content I make. I just try to be very thoughtful and analytical. Be it in a review of a new product or something that I already know and love. And I have new videos every week, especially right now I have multiple a week, almost every day. So I'd love to have you subscribe. Okay, so on to another ranking. This is the end of the year, so it's a lot of wrapping up, it's a lot of best of, it's a lot of, declutters, all of that stuff. So part of that is also me. I wanted to spend this time to really go through all of the palettes that I got this year, by brand basically, and rank them and help me as I, get ready for my declutter and all of that. So if you're curious about the makeup I'm wearing, this video was a trying new makeup video that probably will go up a week or two before this one. I don't actually know. I'm trying to pre-film a bunch for December, but I'm wearing one of the new Surratt Souffle shadows. And then I also just recently off camera topped it with some of the Urban Decay Moon Dust palette because I wanted a little bit more sparkle. And then I used a bunch of Victoria Beckham, and then I used a present from my friend Cam, Cloveroom here. They gave me a Gucci lipstick, and I am wearing this today. Really, really love this. It's become a new go-to with the YSL lip and the Victoria Beckham lip gloss. Apparently I have expensive lip taste. Okay, and before I start, I do want to say I like all of these palettes. This is mostly a color story thing. I know some people hate certain formulas from Natasha Denona, like some people really don't like the cream to powder. I love the cream to powder. It's one of my favorite things she does. I also really like that her palettes are all magnetic. So for most of these, the shades are interchangeable and I could do them as a build your own palette, which I really appreciate. So some of these that rank low, I don't use all of the shades, or I don't really like the bottom one. I don't really like the color story of, but I like a handful of the shades a lot. And so I did get it on a steep discount. I think I paid $25 short or something. So for that, it was worth it. But yeah, I do like all of these. Mostly this is just a color story thing. I do want to say, so I have 4 of the mini palettes. And it's kind of hard to rank those in with the big ones because you're just so limited with only 5 shades. So I'm going to start with ranking those independently and then we'll move on real quick. So I have 4 of these. So for the mini palettes, I'm going to put the last place is the mini Tropic. I got this for $12 and I think this is worth $12. I don't think I'd pay more than that. The formula's fine, not amazing. It is nice to have a little pop of color version. I'm not gonna get rid of this, but it's not her best formula and it's kind of limiting in its color story, but I'm glad I got it for $12. Okay, so the next one is gonna be the mini retro. So this I got recently, just 2 weeks ago from Cam when they were here. They gave me this and then they gave me some things they were decluttering. I do really like this. I've only used it twice now. And I really love this shade, Galaxia, which is why they almost kept it as well for this specific shade. I do really like muted color stories. I just don't think I'm gonna use these 2 shades that much, which is why I've always been a little hesitant to buy this. So I'm very happy to have this. Really love this shade. We'll keep using it for the shade. I'll probably hit pan on this shade. and very thankful for Cam for giving this to me. The rest of these, I'll also say the rest of these I either bought myself or with like a gift card, or like my husband bought me one of these for my birthday or so. So like, but they're all things I bought. The next one is gonna be the Mini Star palette. Really, really love this. I really want the Big Star palette, but I've held off. It's right now 40% off for Black Friday, but I am looking at it and like, I don't need it. I got other stuff. I don't need it. But it is really beautiful. I really like this curation. So you've got a nice transition shade, shade for depth. Really love this antique gold shade. And I really like the shade, although you can see it's kind of like crumbling and shrinking in the pan. I don't really know what's going on with that. I don't know if it's starting to go bad, but it is doing that. But I really love this. And then if you're not new here, you'll know, but my favorite of the mini palettes is Mini Gold. So the shade in the middle is kind of crumbling apart and getting dry, but I still really love it. You've got a nice transition shade for me. It's like my perfect kind of neutral. You've got a green, you've got a really nice smoky shade that you can use here. I love this sparkly gold here, and I love this like green gold here. I just love this, but if you know me, this is not surprising. So I did want to get those out of the way because I feel like if I tried to put these in, this would still probably be at the bottom. This would be near the like lower third, and these would be somewhere in the middle just because they're little and so it's limiting. And it's kind of hard to compare them against like a 15 pan. That's 3 times the size. Okay, so now on to the official ranking of the full-size palettes. So in last place, completely unsurprising to pretty much anybody, it's gonna be the Love palette. I know some people who really, really love this palette. I'm glad I paid $25 for this. I don't think I'd pay more. I do really like some of these shades, like Commitment is really nice, Pure Love. Like some of the shimmers are really pretty. I'm never gonna use First, like First is just an inner corner shade. I'm never gonna use Valentine. I don't really use this. I like this shade. I like this dark red here. So I like a handful of shades here, but as a whole, this is not a me color story. It's very pink, very red, 2 colors I never really wear. But as a kind of completionist, I want these shades for purposes of mixing around, which I don't do very often because it stresses me out to have things not in their place. But I will temporarily pull them out and put them in things, but then they go back to their home because they have to. Like I've said before, I am an autistic Libra with OCD, so like I'm very much, things have to be orderly, things have to go in their place, very structured in a lot of ways. So should not be surprising that I have trouble pulling shadows out of pans and mixing them around. If they go in the wrong order, it stresses me out. Okay, and then next I have the Pastel palette. So I have a video on this palette when it came out. I do like this palette. I think these are good quality pastels, with a caveat. The ones that are a cream to powder, which is why I wanted this, so like Bubble, Feather, Zest, Bora, Tool, those are really good pastels because their cream to powder formula works well in that situation and they show up on me. But like Bellini, Airy, Brisk, they have a hard time showing up because they're just so white based. So like there's a shade like Tool in one of her other palettes coming up that doesn't show up on me at all just because it's a powder matte. But having it as a cream to powder means it does show up. So when I want that pastel pop, it's nice to have. It's not my go-to palette. It's very much a companion palette. I don't wear pastels that often, and I only really wear them in like the late spring, early summer. So it's nice to have, but kind of wish I wouldn't have paid full price for this, although I think I might have had a gift card. Next place is another one that I really enjoy some of the shades from, but I just don't grab it very often. And then is the Glam Palette. I know this is controversial. This is a lot of people's favorite palettes. And I do enjoy it, but I have some issues. One, I hate the naming convention. And then after the fact was like, well, if you're a darker skin tone, you rearrange it this way. I just hate that. I don't think anybody should have to do that, because especially if you do that, it doesn't work fully. Like the transition shade only works for really pale people, and I can use the blend shade as my transition, but then where does this transition shade go? It doesn't really fit. So I just think that was kind of a miss on my end. The reason this is low is one, that, and so there's a couple shades I can't use transition like at all. I can kind of use the crease shade. I just don't really use this side that much, like at these silvery tones. What I do when I grab this is I use blend, smoke, maybe lash line, and then I use like this bronzy brown, this shade, this taupey sparkly shade here, one of these sparkly toppers here. I don't really wear the silvers. I don't use these shades like at all. I like a taupe, but these are a little too like gray for me. This is definitely a pale white person focused palette with the names and stuff. So that is an annoyance I have with Natasha, but I do really like the formula in here. It's just not my go-to. If I'm gonna wear neutrals, this is not the first thing I grab. Okay, and then next is gonna be one of her expensive palettes, and it is the Surratt Loco palette. I mean, they're all expensive. They used to be 65, now they're 69, but this is one of the 120 something dollar palettes, 130. I did buy this half off. So I stand by what I said originally, that I $60 like this. I do not $130 like this. It's really pretty, it's colorful. This is that pink shade I mentioned. This does not show up on me at all, but then this shade is a clear into powder and does, kind of like how the corresponding powder and the other one doesn't. It's just very colorful. It's more a companion palette to me. I really like the shimmers in here, and I grab it for the shimmers more than I grab it for the mattes, and that's why it's a little bit lower. But it is really beautiful. Just not $130 beautiful, in my opinion. Okay, so the next palette is gonna be the Sunrise palette. I think this was the first midi size that she did, and I do really like this. I got this half off like last year. Yeah, maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. I don't know. Time means nothing anymore. Really do like this though. This shade's a little pale for me. Actually, both of these are kind of pale for me. I really love these, and then I like the shimmer. I like the shimmers in here a lot. And then these three mattes are why I really love this. It's really pretty. It's a color story a lot of brands have something similar to. And this kind of helps me not buy those other palettes because I already have this one. And I do really like this. It's just not my go-to. Okay, so the next palette is going to be another kind of controversial one because it's another favorite of most people. And I find it's in the lower half. And it's the Bronze palette. Very reflective. The reason this is low is because it is very repetitive and monochromatic, but I do really like it. So you've got, these two shades are very similar. Like there is some nuance there. This is a little more like orange, and this is a little bit more like mustard, like a little more like yellow and earthy, but they are very similar. All three of these shades are pretty similar. I think she could have curated and edited this a little bit better. You do have a lot of bronzy tones. You've got, I think it's funny that she has true bronze, which is not, it's a copper. And then palladium is actually a bronze. Like, there's just some weird things, but I do really like this. I really love these two shades up here. Rhodium is one of my favorites. It's really interesting. Bliss is really beautiful. There's a ColourPop shade. I think it's, forget the palette, because I decluttered it a long time ago, but there was a ColourPop palette that everyone loves, like Sweet Talk or something, and it had kind of a duochrome like this, but this is like 1000% better. I just really like this, but it's so monochromatic. Everything you do, there's nuance, but like not a lot. It's pretty one note, and that's my problem. It's like mid-tone, warm, orangey with like these two shades. So it almost ranked lower, but I do really like the shades. I just don't think it's a very good curation of shades, you know? The next palette is another one that I really do like, but is not perfect, and it is the Triochrome. So the Triochrome. I do really like this. I really like how muted and desaturated it is, but it is very light and very pastel. So the Triochrome, there's only 3 shimmers. They're pretty. Color flip is really pretty. Kinetic, It's like a blue purple, but like not very strong. Scarab is the best. It's a very much green to gold duochrome. I don't really see them, they're not the strongest multi-chromes. They're good everyday kind of multi-chromes. They're not gonna make someone be like, whoa, that's a lot. But they're the kind more people like, ooh, what's that? And I do really like some of these shades. I love this one, I love this one, I like this, I like this, I like this, but it's very desaturated and like Vertex I can't use really. This shade I can use, but it's really hard. Like there's a lot of like pale inner corner shades, but not really good shades for me to build a look with. So again, I also wish it was a smaller size. I think both it and Circle Loco could benefit from being the midi size. I don't really think most palettes need to be this big, especially for these. And then I could, if they were, I could also rearrange them with the other palettes, which I think I would like better. Again, I really like this, really do like this. I've revisited it recently and I think it's a good fall palette. Good all year, but spring and fall are the times that I like am drawn to these colors. I just don't think it's perfect and I don't think it's worth $130. I think it's worth what I paid, which was like $65. Okay, so now we are in the top half, high beam of the stack. And these are all, this was hard. These are all things I really enjoy. So those I like have caveats where I don't love this or I only like half the palette, that kind of thing. These are all, I like the palette a lot. This is where it was actually like hard to kind of like pinpoint what was what. The top couple were pretty easy. It was like this midsection that was hard. So the next one is gonna be the Natasha Denona Retro palette. I really do like this palette a lot. I've used this quite a bit. I think I need to use this week to work. I really love it. I really like Jude and Helio are my two most commonly used shades. I like that it's like, you've got these more like wine tones here, mauve and wine, and then you've got some kind of desaturated peaches over here. And then it's kind of like terracotta-y peach. I really do like this. Psychedelic is supposed to be like a really special shade. It's a little too icy and pink for me. Same with this one. And that's what knocked this down a little bit is there's, you know, it's pretty, but not my favorite. I'm mostly reaching for like Opart, Jude, Helio, Patty, Go-Go. And Helio, Nude Mauve, and Amara, I think, are all shades that are in Leela. And I like, they're supposed to be the same, but they're not. And I like the other versions more. Spoiler. I think the colors and formula is just a little bit better than the other ones. It's another one I really enjoy, and I think of this as her best of palette, and it is the My Dream palette. I think the packaging is really interesting with the paint splatters. I think the names in this are kind of, like, one of the shade names is Babies. But I do think this is a really beautiful palette. Mine has a typo, Spontaneous is misspelled, which annoys me, but also I find funny. Like, it's a $70 palette, shouldn't have any typos, but also I find it kind of hilarious that it does. But it's really pretty. It's got some shades that are very similar to Retro. They're not identical, but you've got some similar tones here, but then you've got some like warmer tones and then like this really bright copper. So it's kind of a mix of that warm and cool. So it's kind of like having bronze, retro, and another all mixed together. So I think it's one of those, if you were just getting into her palette and her palettes and you wanted to try and you weren't sure which one spoke to you the most, I think this is a good one to start with because you've got a multi-chrome, you've got some sparkly shades, you've got some more satin shades, you've got cream to powders, you've got mattes, you've got a little bit of everything in warm and cool tones, and I think it's a really great mix of that. I really like this palette. It's been well used, as you can see by all the sparkles. I try to keep my palettes looking pretty nice, but you know, not always possible. And then the next one is another controversial one because most people would put this at the bottom. And I love it a lot. And it is the Zeno palette. Another one for super shiny ones. People hate this palette. I have a whole video about that. I love this palette. I think I love the mix of cool and warm. and you've got some neutral. I think the colors are all really pretty. I think people expected high shine sparkly shadows, and this is more muted, and that's why I like it and why people hate it. So like, it's got these two blue shades. They're really beautiful. They're the kind of blue you can wear every day without being too sparkly. It's got a bunch of cream to powders, which I really like. I use them a lot. I've traveled with this a lot because I can do a really quick everyday look. I can also do something bigger and, you know, more colorful. Sense is a really beautiful, like, pinky bronze. Yama is a duochrome, but it's kind of sheer, so it makes like a really nice one and done kind of toppery effect. I really like. I just think it's a really beautiful palette, and I didn't have any problems with the formulas like so many people did. So it's not at the very top, but it's up there. Okay, so next is going to be the Leela palette. So this, I think, is back in stock. I don't know. It's supposed to be discontinued. I don't love the packaging. I don't hate this packaging, actually, this like thing. I don't love this aspect where it's like kind of hard foam, and then it's got the sheet with the shade names. So if you want to see the shade name, you have to flip it back down. I don't like that. I'd rather either no shade names or them printed. But I really love this. So again, yeah, this has Nude Mauve, Amara, and Helio. So we've got Amara, Nude Mauve, and Helio, and I just think these ones are better versions of those shadows. People think of this as her purple palette because of the case, but if you look at it, you've got like this bright kind of purple and this more grapey purple. If you cover those up, this is pink, and these are all like cool neutrals and mauves, so it's not as purple as people think, but I think it's a really beautiful neutral palette, and I've been in the mood for this kind of tone more and more in the last year. So I really love this. The shimmers in here are really pretty, but none of them are like her super sparkly formula. But for day to day, I love this. I mean, I like sparkly day to day too, but it's easy to throw one of these on the lid and blend the edges with something and go about my day. It's like less fuss, faster, you know, when I'm trying to get ready for work in 20 minutes, it just works better. So I just had to rethink. I'm kind of second guessing some of these. I'm not second guessing the number one, but I'm second guessing a couple of the others. But I'm sticking with my gun, sticking with my decision. It doesn't matter anyway. There's no real consequences of this. It just feels like there is. The next one is gonna be Metropolis. So this, I think last year was my favorite, and it could be number two pretty easily. I adore this palette. I use this a lot. It's one of my most used palettes in my collection. Even though it doesn't look like it, I'm just very gentle. I love that you've got some really good olive tones here. You've got some warm neutrals. You've got these pop-up blues. I really love this. It's just so good. And I'm second guessing myself, but no, I'm gonna stick with it here. I would say the next couple could all basically be tied for second place. It's just so good. I do think it's a little redundant, like, you know, this shade and this shade are both very similar. These shades are pretty similar. This one's a little darker, obviously, but, you know, not significant. You've got a lot of bronzy tones here they're all different, but they're not like, did you need 5 bronzes? Like, you know, I think that's why it's a little bit lower than the other ones. I really like her eyeshadow formulas. I really like most of her color stories, but I think she struggles with curation a little bit. Like, you know, retro glam, I don't have, and it's like, there's a couple things I would tweak. I'd add a couple darker shades for more skin tones. You know, glam, the shade name thing, the new Xenon palette, there's a few, I really want it, but it's not, I don't $70 want it. I want like $30 want it. So like, I just think there's, you know, she tends to, I appreciate nuance and color theory a lot. I spend a lot of time thinking about formula differences and color differences and nuance, but like, there's also a point where you're like, those are pretty similar. Do you really need both? Okay, so next is going to be a newer palette that came out this year and I really, really love, and it is probably the one I'm gonna recommend to most people, and it's the I Need A Nude palette. I hate the name, but I do love this palette. I wish there were a couple differences. The reason it's not like number one, I think there's, again, some shades that they're not identical, but they're pretty close. So I wish one of these was, I feel like these two, there could be more difference between them. Maybe one of them would be a little more close to this. That way this could be darker. So you just have a little bit more inclusivity in the color story. But the formulas are all really beautiful. The shimmers are nice. The like more sparkly browns or taupey shades are just what I'm in the mood for most days lately. You've got some like muted peachy terracottas again, but even more muted than anything else. And then you've got these really sparkly wet effect shades that I just really love. So really happy I got this. I think the packaging's beautiful. There's just a couple little tweaks that I wish she would make, but I could say that about pretty much every palette. The next one, number 2, let me know if you think I'm sure you know what the top 2 are at this point. This one and Metropolis, we're going back and forth, and I'm still not 100% sure. I could swap this with Metropolis pretty easily, but it's gonna be the gold palette. I love this. I remember first getting into makeup a couple years ago, and I've been into makeup and watching like makeup artist content for a long time. Like, I have videos about that. But when I first started buying makeup, I remember going to Sephora and seeing this and being like, people really love this, and like looking at it and being like, really? People are paying $130 for that? Like, why? I could never spend that much money on a palette, especially something so boring. I didn't pay $130 for this. I did pay I think I paid like $90. But I love it so much. I will argue with people. People say these are greens. These are blues. These are teal blues. This is very blue, especially against my skin tone, but this is just straight up blue. This is kind of green. This is green. This is kind of a greeny gold. But these are not, these are blue. But I really love this. You've got a really nice curation of neutral mattes. You've got the mustard shade. You've got some really beautiful one and done kind of bronzy browns that you can wear. And then you've got 3 really beautiful toppers. So you've got a sheer wet effect brown, a sheer wet effect like champagne-y white, and then the wet effect sparkly sheer like duochrome. I just love this. I really, really think she should come out with a midi size of this. I think it would sell really well, and it should be a permanent part of her collection. I've said it before, and I'll just say it until she does it. It should be a $69 midi permanent in her line. I think it would sell well. And then last but not least, because it's number 1, is gonna be the Yucca palette. This should be no surprise to anybody, but I love this palette. It is like my perfect olive palette. So people are saying it's a green palette and comparing it to things that were like way more green. I don't consider this a green palette. I've said this dozens of times. It is an olive palette. There are some greens in here, but there are also some neutrals that are olive. So like this brown even. This is a little more like olive green, and this is like dark olive, but these shimmers as well are more neutral olive shades. They're not very green. There's not a lot of green. I don't know how to explain it other than that. Like, they're olive, not necessarily green. But there are some greens. You've got a teal here too. You've got this bright lime. I just really love this. I think it's her best curation. You've got some of her best shimmers. These are like on par with Terra Moon's sparkly shadows. And then you've got one like standard metallic. I think this is just a really beautiful palette, and it's one of my favorite palettes that came out this year. I really love this. I have a whole video talking about it, talking about the theme, what it means to me, what the shade names mean, all of that. I'll have that linked above. But yeah, I just really love this. And yeah, I saw a lot of people say this was, you know, too green and grungy. I think the beauty community, I've said this before, needs to get past the word grungy, because most of the time people are calling something grunge or grungy, and it's literally like just a mid-tone brown, or like an olivey shade that is literally my skin tone, or like, you know, like a neutral on me or many people darker than me. And I think we just need to get past that mindset. I've even seen people lately say the new Huda Beauty grunge palette is not grunge because it's not green and not earthy. And I'm like, no, because it's 90s grunge. Like, it fits the theme perfectly. You don't know what grunge means. But that is a rant for a different video. Okay, so that is it. That is my ranking. Let me know what you think in the comments. Where did you guess them right? How would you rank them? I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, let me know what you think in the comments. I love to talk to you. And thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. A couple weeks ago when Cam was here and they gave me this.